Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Comics. I am your host, Sean Fuller, and today we're hanging out with a creator who will redefine what indie comics can be, Will Thomas, the writer behind Ringo Award-winning Spice of Life comedy, Smut Volume 1. Sounds fun. No, don't let the title fool you. Smut is a sharp, heartfelt, and laughed out loud funny. It follows three women navigating their messy love lives in a brutally honest, sometimes steamy, always relatable way, thinking Sunstones meet Giant Days. To me, that sounds like Desperate Housewives, but let's get going. But with its own distinct voice. We're going to talk about how Will built this world, the balance between humor and vulnerability, and what it takes to make an award-winning indie book stand out in today's crowded market. We're going to talk about that too. So let's jump right into it. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing good. Thanks for showing up today. I always want to appreciate my comic book artists that came out, spent time on their day to give me some time of it. So before I get started, we always like to get you the opportunity to introduce yourself. So welcome. How did your journey into writing comics begin?
Sure thing. Writing. So I was writing. I've been writing for a long time. Was doing a lot of prose and short stories and such in high school and college, and then got into writing my friends' screenplays for their college films. So I was kind of headed toward trying to write for the screen. But that is a logistical nightmare. It takes a lot of money, and I'm from Arkansas, so not really like where anything is happening. So a friend of mine, Dalton, who is a co-writer on several of my books, kind of veered me into comics, and I fell in love with the medium, and I've been writing ever since. So it was about 7-8 years ago that we started doing that.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
So you brought up your background. You said you're from, where you say you're from?
Little Rock, Arkansas. Originally.
So you're from Arkansas, but now you're in Chicago. How did that journey transfer?
Well, when I graduated, when my wife, girlfriend at the time, graduated from college, I didn't want to break up, so I moved with her to Nashville, and from there we got married. We got a house. We started building a life together, and for a couple different reasons, mostly her job. It's being a writer, I can work anywhere. She wanted to move here for an opportunity that this area is just really big for what she does. She's a microbiologist. So there's a lot of different avenues that she can work at, a lot of different, whether it's hospital, medical research, or what she's doing now, which is newborn test screening. And I followed her up, which was the best decision I ever made, aside from marrying her, because this rules. No, I love living in Chicago, and I don't think we want to move anytime soon.
Hey, I understand the medical field as well. So if she's in that field, I know that Baltimore falls into that category as well.
Absolutely.
So I kind of know where all the biotech people want to run to. I know a few people that moved to Chicago as well. So your background started in the media, screen media, and then as a writer. And so let's talk about like the early days in Arkansas. What was in Arkansas that kind of got you into writing in the first place?
Nothing, man. There's nothing to do all day long every day. So it's just read, and eventually you go, I can, you read enough kind of not bad, but just like books that they force you to read in school.
Okay.
And that you hate, and you think, I can do a better job than this, and then
you
have to put your money where your mouth is and start writing. And you don't for a little while, and suddenly you do. No, it's just it was the first thing I remember really like wanting to do as that really drove me beyond just like momentary fascination.
All right, so
I wanted to tell stories and kind of build on that, but the answer is it's incredibly boring where I lived, and there was really nothing. I just needed something to entertain me.
So was storytelling always the goal for you, or did you discover? But I know you said you discovered comics later. So
Yeah, it wasn't about the medium per se. It was just like I want to write. You know,
okay.
I was trying to like write novels and short stories and get published kind of in the more traditional route. And
Mhm.
as I grew up, I realized that it, it kind of there's not really a market for it. Like no one reads novels and short story, or God forbid short stories at this point. So I
Mhm.
felt like I was just kind of running up against a brick wall, and I was looking for some other way. It's not really important to me that it's my prose, my words that are on a page, as much as it is that like I get to be a part of the process of telling a story, which is how I got into film and eventually how I got into comics.
And I would say a lot of it is because there's a lot of story there. Because I feel the pain when you said that, because it's like you love to present yourself in a way, but because of the saturation of just randomness
Yeah,
with AI generated stuff now, it becomes very diluted in real voices versus artificial ones.
sure. And that's sort of
Text.
the part of the battle today. I'm not super threatened by AI as like they're gonna take our job or like start making comics, because like AI generated comics are always gonna look like shit. They're and
I
the
told you no,
people
don't say that.
like the people who are interested in reading books that I would make are already people who aren't going to be interested in reading an AI comic, and vice versa. If you're like super interested in the idea of making AI comics and reading AI, I don't know anyone that's interested in reading AI comics, but if you're
Actually, I
super
don't
interested in
either.
making AI comics, then like you're definitely not going to be interested in what I'm doing already.
And
So
and it's
there's not really
funny.
a
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I think what's gonna most likely be the case is that a lot of people that create the comics might find themselves dipping and dabbing into kind of trying to figure a different medium like videography of their comics. But that's a complete different conversation. We ain't gonna jump on that right
yeah,
now. All right.
yeah.
So we want to stick on the early days, origin stories.
Sure thing.
We're
Yeah.
still on the. So who were some early creative influence that shape your voice and your style?
Um, for like narrative voice, I would say the first author I really fell in love with and kind of not try to emulate, but just really loved their style and wanted to do something similar was Kurt Vonnegut. Um, Great writer, just insanely talented novelist, and one of the better postmodern kind of thinkers out there. Um, yeah, first read Slaughterhouse-Five in high school and just kind of went on a tear through his books. Mother Night, I still read like once a year. It's just an incredible kind of story driven by these kind of momentary jokes, but somehow strings together into a really heartfelt story.
And I think that's what you aim for with your own writing sometimes too. It's like you
Sure,
try
certainly.
to.
And then also like when it comes to prose, it's the sort of get to the point very quickly, get or like short paragraphs make the reader really satisfied, but like they accomplish something, short chapters for the same reason, and just like keep people going down the page, and very kind of a matter of fact but snappy style is what I go for, which I learned
Okay.
from him. I'd say my other big influence is probably Jennifer Egan,
Okay.
who really like contemporary, incredible modern novelist. Wrote what was it? A Visit from the Goon Squad, one of my favorite books of all time.
It's good.
Yeah, Goon Squad's great.
No, it's funny because you bring up books I'm aware of. And it's like, damn, I haven't heard people bring this up in a minute.
Yeah, no, I mean that's sort of where I started in terms of like this is how I would like to shape what I do narratively. And I do love Goon Squad. My first novel that I wrote is very inspired by Goon Squad. It jumps around chronologically. It's got different points of view. It's a giant mess, but I still love it and I want to publish it to this day. And then for comics, I shudder to say Alan Moore, because that is kind of the thought heady pretentious answer, but I do really love Alan Moore's work, and that is what originally got me into comics, was reading Watchmen and V for Vendetta. And then on the opposite side, Brian Lee O'Malley with Scott Pilgrim and Seconds, still some of my favorite graphic novels ever. And then more recently, I would say like Dan Waters with Coffin Bound, one of my favorite books of all. Still, I mean, yeah, one of my favorite comics probably, and criminally underrated in my opinion. And recently, I've been really into obviously Stepan Seven, Stepan Sejic, who did Sunstone, which
Don't
this
worry,
book.
this ain't a quiz test. We get so you've been touched by a lot of great influences that have shaped your style, and I feel like there's you kind of, and the mere fact that you started for screen to print to now visualization of your art, it kind of you kind of went to a more structured way of kind of learning different art styles, which kind of shows up.
For sure.
I guarantee it's going to show up way better than most people are used to, especially people like me that started off by just basically liking anime and manga, and then basically said, let me continue what I know based on this style. Versus when I meet people that come from a writing background, they understand the entire structure of what they're trying to sell in terms of the emotional dialect, the jokes, the punchlines, all that good stuff.
For sure.
And it comes off very well tailored, and then the visual representation of it just feels polished.
Yeah. I mean, I not that I like, what I love about comics is the collaborative elements and how we all get, like, everyone involved gets to polish a story together. But I also know that, like, what my job is like the structure of it, the sort of direction of the story and the characters, and like I want everyone to bring their own like personality and craft to the comic, but also I have to be aware of like what I'm there bringing in. And yeah, that's absolutely it.
So here's a question to ask. So you worked on multiple projects across genres, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what drew you specifically to spice of life and relationship-based storytelling?
Well, it's so in a way, it's kind of more similar to what I was doing in college, which was a lot of slice of life, which was a lot of drama and a lot of more grounded, if not like fully grounded, at least like magical realism, where it's very close to grounded with just like some fantastical elements. But it was also sort of looking at what I hadn't done yet, and I had never really done like a romance or like explicitly, stories about relationships. And I wanted to see a lot of how I write is just looking at genres that I haven't done and go, what would I do to make that interesting? So for romance, it was a couple of different avenues that I went down for romance, but for this book in particular, it was like, what if I was just really like, it just created a scene, or started with a scene about like just three friends talking through kind of their grievances and what they're going through on a day-to-day basis, and just tell a story that is both about sex and also just incredibly honest about like what real life relationships look like, and how to build
that's
something.
Don't change. Yeah. This is consistently changing. So this is so you tried something that you have never tried before. You kind of broke yourself out the mold, and then
well, I get bored. It's kind of the short answer. Like if I'm doing the same thing over and over again, I'll feel like I'm going into a rut. I'll feel like I'm getting bored with it, and oftentimes where inspiration comes from, at least for me, is like, well, what is this new thing that I've never tried before? And what would I do to make that interesting and different? Everyone does it, which is not to say that like I want to reinvent the wheel, but oftentimes I'll be like, everyone's kind of doing for Smut, you look at Kickstarter and every other project is like, has a look to it. Is like has like kind of the not safe for work thing going on, or has a million like covers, and then the story, it's like kind of barely tangentially connected to that, or where sex is a selling point, or it's kind of like the only thing going on in the book, and there's not really like a lot of red meat on there. And I wanted to make a book that was just all sincere character stuff, like a book where you fall in love with the characters, and it, in the same way that like an action movie has explosions, this book has sex.
All right, so we are now going to transition into talking about Smut now. So volume
Sure
one.
thing.
So for those new to Smut, how would you describe the series in your own words?
I mean, very similar to how you described it at the top of the hour. It's
I try sometimes not to step on y'all
Yeah.
toes.
No, it's good. It's an erotic slice of life comedy about three women working through their really messy love lives, sort of in an anthology style. So every issue goes through a different person's journey. The first one goes through Dakota's story, who is
Go to the top, by the way.
that was the idea, yeah. Personal trainer going on a first date, trying to behave herself, not doing a very good job of it. And each story is just kind of about, you know, whatever problem they think they're facing, and then gets into kind of what problem they're actually facing and how they sort of deal with it.
Okay.
All sort of building toward like how to build a stable relationship, how to communicate effectively, how to like get your needs across when it's awkward to talk about it.
Talk about the biggest communication is the biggest what do you call it? The biggest effectiveness of a relationship is all down to communication.
100%. Yeah.
And so I see this is gonna be a funny it's gonna be funny. So what inspired the story of three women figuring out love, identity, and chaos in your own words? What kind of brought that to you?
What brought that? It was a lot of being sort of disappointed in a lot of what I was seeing. Which, you know, I've been on Kickstarter for a little while, and or for a couple of years now, and trying to get your own thing, you look at what's popular and what's working, and a lot of what was working, especially at the time, was like really kind of shallow dives into not safe for work. And I thought, well, I can do better than that. And then eventually I had to be like, well, if I can do better than that, I should. And so I dove into that. What specifically, like part of it was reading Sunstone, which is a book I absolutely adore, which takes like very taboo topics about sex, like BDSM and somewhat, and uses that to put you in a state of mind of like, I'm in high school and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm falling in love for the first time, and everything is exciting and raw and real. And I kind of wanted to capture that feeling, but do it in my own way. I didn't want to like copy
And the thing about it is funny because when I used to go through Spice of Life, especially romance Spice of Life content, it used to be like love triangle stuff, right? So it's like
sure.
this. And I got used to that perspective to the point that it bored me, because I'm like, I already know this guy, and someone's gonna get the shot hand and the stick, because there's no polygamy in these outcomes. So it's entertaining now that you're bringing it from three different ladies' perspective. So it's like, as long as none of them are interested in each other, there's each person's gonna have a resolution at some point.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna be entertaining regardless. So balancing comedy, romance, and real emotion so well. How do you decide when to lean into humor versus vulnerability?
I mean, I think there's room for all of it, and it comes down a little bit to instinct. Like, I don't know if I can quantify when it's best to, you know, fully lean into a joke and when to be sincere. In general, you want to lead with jokes and then get more sincere as you go along. That's you know, the sort of way I would generalize it. But a lot of it just, to me at least, comes down to what works in the moment and what is needed to drive the story forward. Yeah, I don't. It's one of those things that like, hey, where do you get your ideas from? I'm like, thin air. I don't know, man. It just happens.
Hey, I literally have a book. I won't say a book, but I have like in my my app notation book. It's like every time an idea pops in my head, I write it down and just structure the outline for it because I'm like, oh, this is cool. I can't do
Mhm.
it now, but at least I know it. It
Yeah,
sounds cool. And that's always a good thing to do, guys. It comes on top of your head. Who knows where it comes from?
for sure.
Thank God and the inspiration of daily life. Okay. All right. So we go transition um, right now to our sponsors. I have to pay some bills. Don't mind me
Absolutely.
for you. And then after that, we're going to get into the creative process of of your comic, if you don't mind.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Okay, where is my?
This video is sponsored by mycomic.ai, the first of its kind platform built to solve real struggles comic creators like us face. If you've ever felt stuck trying to make consistent sales from your work, this is your solution. mycomic.ai helps you turn your comic into a real business and grow it into a full-time income stream. Check it out today at mycomic.ai.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Now we're back to it. So, winning the Ringo Award is a huge milestone.
For sure.
What did that recognition mean for you and your team?
I mean, for me, it was sort of a not a wake up call, but just like a step toward validation that you rarely get in an industry like this. I think everyone feels like they're on the outside and they're trying to break in until the moment it happens, and then suddenly they're the main character. It can feel like that sometimes, and it's not that like suddenly I feel like everything is solved and we've done, but like it's easy to tell yourself like I'm fooling myself to think that I made it, and like are people really paying attention to this? And to get an award that's like this high profile absolutely is a moment of like, yeah, no, we're doing the right thing. We're absolutely this is the right path to be on. It was very unexpected. Certainly did not think that we were going to be able to pull it off, either in the nomination or in the win. And it was overwhelming, to say the least, to be able to get that recognition at the time. I'll say to my team, they deserve it 100%. I can never say for sure that like, oh, I earned this. But when I think about like Krista, my editor, and my designer, Brenda, and Bianca, especially the artist, yeah, they're fantastic. And I think that they, I know it means a lot to them, and I hope that they flaunt it every chance that they get, because
Hey, that's a good resume builder. I don't know.
They deserve raises and they deserve the recognition for sure. They're great.
Exactly. So, how do you approach collaboration with your artist, your editor on a book like Smut? That's so character driven.
For sure. Well, a big part of it is building trust. So I'm coming to an artist with my, erotica comic. That's a very vulnerable, like, I'm asking them to risk a lot for, if it's not very good, then it's a lot, then like they're the ones who really kind of take the heat for it, or at the very least, that's what it kind of looks like. But or that's what it seems like from my perspective, is like it's a very vulnerable thing that I'm asking of them. So making sure that at every step of the way they were okay with it, they were okay with like the language I was using in the script, and where they wanted, like how far they wanted to take the sex scenes and stuff like that. That sort of level of like over communication and making sure that everyone is on the same page was really, really important for this script in particular, which worked out because that's sort of what the story is about overall. But it was also just like, I feel really strongly about what I'm doing, and I know that like if you read the script, if you jump into it, you'll I believe that you'll get what we're going for, and we can all like move forward together. Which was great. It sort of is how it worked out. It was a lot of trust, because it's me doing like interracial queer relationships as a straight white dude. So it required a lot of like, hey, we need to make sure that like we're not going to be doing something
you do your background
later.
I was going to ask, was this team your first time working with them on this project, or this is a team that already established before?
Some of
And
them I had worked with before. So Brenda, my designer, and Krista, my editor, I've worked with a lot. I have a lot of trust built up with them. Bianca and I had never worked together. It was one of those things where it seems like it's going to be straightforward to find an artist for a project like this, and then it was extremely complicated. It took a lot of time and digging and reaching out. Bianca had actually never done any like a project going this far before. She'd done some kind of like pinup style stuff and very like suggestive stuff, but never like fully erotica, which she was hesitant about at first. And I was just like, hey, read the script. If you don't like it, then we don't have to do it. And if you want to adjust some stuff, we can absolutely do that. And she really loved the characters and just wanted to jump into it. So that was a good sign for me that I was on the right path, was that someone who was very like, I don't know, this kind of sounds maybe not my deal, read it and was like, okay, we're doing it.
Yeah, I get it. And it's like when you try to write a story about there's an entire genre, for crying out loud. So I get where some people might be hesitant. So what's your creative process like from script to finish page? How does that normally flow for you?
Typically it starts wherever I get the idea from. Sometimes it's in the middle of writing another script. Sometimes it just hits me on a walk or whatever. I try and sit for it for a couple of days and just see if it keeps bothering me. Because if it's like a momentary fascination, then like I don't want to invest a bunch of time into trying to make it work. But if I keep coming back to it, then I'm like, okay, there's probably something here. After that, I'll make an outline and try and get some like character bios. Or if I'm feeling it, I'll just jump into the first scene and see how it works out. In this case, I think I just wrote the first 10 pages of roundabout, where they're all sitting around the diner and just talking about their relationship problems. And those dynamics felt so real and authentic that I really wanted to know more about them individually and kind of lead into their stories. I kind of had a vague idea of like, I want a story about this. I want a story about a first date. I want a story about something that we didn't wind up actually doing, and then a story about like changing the dynamic in a relationship in a really radical way that like one person's kind of uncomfortable with and they have to talk about and come to an understanding of. So I had these like vague notions of what I wanted to do, and then I started fleshing out the characters a little bit more and having them joke around and having their personality sort of come out in that way. And then at some point I'll sit down and write an outline, and I'll usually make an honest attempt to keep to the outline. Usually by point 3 or 4, I've deviated entirely. We're on to something else, but I do try.
It's cool because initially I was going to say, is it like you doing a screenplay and then you let the artist kind of interpret it, or it was?
No, I am I'm exacting in my script to the point that I do usually tell the artist, if you see this going another way, or if you see this like this panel layout differently, like in a way that makes more sense to you, feel free to alter it. Because the way it's laid out on the page is extremely like, panel 1, this happens, this is what they say. Panel 2, like, and sometimes I will even call out like camera, movement and the general layout of the page. But that's because I want, if nothing else, I want them to be able to like fall back on what I think the vision is, or at the very least like explain how I saw it. Not necessarily that like it has to be exactly that. Okay, that's it.
They got freedom. It's not that they're not allowed to put in their own words in the topic,
for sure.
Which is good. And
there's always a point where I submit the script to them and I like tell them, hey, if you don't like how the scene is going, or if you want to incorporate something like a visual gag or something in the background, like let me know and I'll work it into the scene. I think it's partially like their trust in me, and partially that like it's well written, and partially that like I'm doing enough on both sides of it, giving them the freedom and putting in enough material into the script that like there usually isn't a lot of extra stuff it's usually like a suggestion here or there, and not like, well, I don't think this scene works out the way it's supposed to, which is good.
I get it. It comes down to how collaborative your team is, and how great your vision is. If the vision is great and tight, people don't really argue with it.
For sure.
And then
I will say for full credit to Krista, the editor, who absolutely will like will call me on my stuff, and not in a way that's like, hey, don't do that, but just like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Like, what were you going for? And just like make me explain myself to the point where we either find a better way to do it or scrap it altogether, which I did allude to. Issue 3 wound up having a pretty dramatic change to it, just because the subject matter we were diving into, we realized probably needed a full graphic novel to actually get into, and wasn't going to be good for like a 22-page script.
Got it, guys. See, hey, when you can pivot, when you pivoting is a thing, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Stay light on your feet, because you're whatever you're making, it's not going to look the same by the end.
As the military, as the United States military said, even the best laid plans get altered when it hits real world experience. Mm-hmm. So, hey, guys. Okay, so now we're going to switch up, and we're going to switch to the business side of indie comics. So we're talking about you have a strong, successful Kickstarter, and we have some big lessons about the Kickstarter. I'm going to bring it up so people can see it, and you can just talk us through what you've been experiencing.
For sure.
And thus far. Let me start scrolling. All right. Is it scrolling? Are you seeing it?
Yes, it's scrolling.
All right, cool. So as we go down to us, talk to us about what are some of the challenges of working on a mature specialized as an indie character, especially when you're doing a crowdfunding campaign.
For sure. I think the biggest challenge is, I mean, obviously it's finding an audience, which is kind of a big, broad thing, but just, trying to get people who otherwise wouldn't see it or wouldn't care to get really invested in what you're doing and bring your vision to the forefront. Part of that is this is probably my 21st project, and I have a bunch of people that follow me from project to project and trust that I am going to deliver something really satisfying.
Okay.
But part of that is also knowing what to do on the page to get people interested and make them want to read through it and stick around. It's about knowing your story inside and out and being able to like describe it on a level of like, okay, you have one sentence to get to satisfyingly tell people what this is about and get them interested.
So now, how important has your community been? Because it sounds like you have solid backings of readers, backers, peers, been with your growth as you start telling stories across different mediums. How was it to build that audience and keep that audience engaged in your projects in both digital as well as physical?
I mean, it requires a lot of discipline and a lot of consistency. I would say I probably did go about it the wrong way in that
there's a wrong way to stuff I didn't know.
Well, what I did was I thought to myself, kind of I started in conventions. So we started off not doing Kickstarter. We started off going to comic conventions and selling ash cans for like $2 each, which didn't make a lot of money at first, but we got there eventually. And what we thought we wanted, like what we needed on the table at the time was like, we want something to show to anyone. Anyone comes up, they say, I like horror. Okay, I've got 2 books on horror. I've got these 2 horror books. Okay. I like sci-fi. I've got this book. I like romance. I've got this fantasy romance over here. Like something that I can sell to anyone. I think if I knew the majority of like what I was of my career was going to come from Kickstarter, I would have dived into a single book, done like what Charlie Stickney did, where he has White Ash, his fantasy series, and he has spin-offs of that, but it's like it's one ongoing thing that he's built an audience around. And then when he's ready to like make a new series, he knows he's not going to get that full audience over there, but there's enough trust build up that it's like, hey, I'm doing this new thing. We can get some of those people over to the new one and then build that out separately.
Yeah, and still expand your audience because you're getting a new audience as it is.
And you get some expansion into the new one, but oftentimes the new one doesn't do as well at first because everyone's expecting the first thing. People kind of have to work their way into it. That said, what I did was sort of the opposite, which is I just started throwing everything at the wall. We started on with Mechaton, which is very all ages and sci-fi and Scott Pilgrim and whatnot. And then we did 2 issues of that, and then we debuted Frankenstein the Unconquered, which is action horror, Conan the Barbarian, Universal Horror Monsters, very mature horror, very opposite kind of vibes. And we did get people coming in for both of them that enjoyed the vibe of both of them. But we found really quickly that it was 2 different audiences that we were working with, people who liked the Frankenstein stuff, people who liked the Mechaton stuff. And that sort of wound up being the case with not every book that we did. I've gotten a lot better about like communicating how books are similar and why an audience should be interested in the next book, because if they're interested in the one that they've already picked up.
So if you don't mind me asking, how would you go about, if you starting from a brand new person now in the Kickstarter side, how would you go about even starting with a brand new audience now? Because it seems like you understand the value of having a focused audience.
Sure.
But then it's like if you try to branch out from that narrow focus, how does that kind of impact your process of even trying to get that going?
Sure. Well, if we're talking about if I'm want to build an audience,
let's say moving from what you have right now to like a fairy tale kiddie book for like kids in kindergarten.
Well, I wouldn't do that for a number of reasons, but like so I mean, there are other books that I'm so like the next book that we're working on is called Love is Simple. It's similarly has some like erotic elements to it, but it is a little bit more like fantasy-esque. So I'm taking the opportunity for my Smut readers. Hey, same creative team, same like kind of fun, lighthearted vibes. You still get the sex, you still get like that character work. And then for my fantasy readers, I'm like that are reading my book that's a fantasy romance right now, The Cat Skin and the Rose. I'm like, hey, do you like this, but maybe wish it was a little bit more supernatural, maybe wish it went a little bit further into like sex and relationship dynamics? I've got this great book over here for you. So there are definitely ways to merge the audiences. That's kind of what I was alluding to, though, is I've gotten better at making my next project something that the people who like what I'm doing will like, if that makes sense. So where I can more easily relate it, rather than going from, again, like all ages, comedy book to extremely self-serious, action horror.
And I think the reason I was asking the question was because most people get the opportunity to just kind of start there and they just keep building onto the same stuff. So it's kind of like they're built into that narrow focus.
Yes. And that's what I would recommend. That's the better idea than what I did.
No, I get it. But for some, but the reason I asked you that question, because I'm like, you started the opposite route before going down that route. So you kind of know the pain points that comes with
absolutely
doing it the other way. And I was going to ask you, what are the challenges or the advantages you saw when you were doing it the opposite way that led you down the pathway, and then kind of journey back?
Yeah. I'll say the advantages are what I said earlier, the convention scene is great for us because we have a book to sell to everyone. So if we can get someone to our table, they're gonna leave happy. It also helps that, you know, we're making a bunch of different books at the same time. So while we can't always focus on the same audience, we always have something new coming out. We always have something like additional that we're working on. You know, if you don't care for what we're doing right now, come back in a month, there'll be something for you. And it's really creatively fulfilling. I get to make, you know, not whatever I want all the time. Just that's not how life works. It's not how the market works, but I get to make a pretty wide variety of stuff that I find, you know, challenging and fun to make. And like I said earlier, I get bored if I'm doing the same thing over and over again. So being able to just like go from thing to thing is really fulfilling, and I like it a lot.
And I think that's a great concept right there for the audience to understand, is that first of all, the marketing of anything is the differential factor that determines success and failure, right?
Sure.
Because it's not enough to be in a crowded room. The question is your audience in that room?
100%.
And that kind of dictates how well you do in any room that you put into. So I understand why people stay focused, because like, I found my people in my room, I'm trying to be focused.
Yeah.
And that works exceptionally well, especially when you have a long running thing.
Mm-hmm.
So each and every time you're doing it, people get it's the same way we're doing in federal contract, because I'm government contractor. When you're a federal contractor, is that the more they see you in the room, the more they begin to trust you. Because the first time in the room, they don't trust you. But as they see you in the room, they kind of trust you. So I understand that value. And it's kind of like there's the two sides of it. There's like the structured campaign, and then there's the guerrilla tactics. The guerrilla tactics is what you use when you just brand out the room. I'm trying everything to see what hits.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm feeling that was all you started. And you realize that, you know, I realize I hit these people on the head every single time. I'm just trying to stick to these guys for a few more minutes and see how well it works. And it works. I can't lie. It works.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about your upcoming Frankenstein and the Unconquered release for Source Press.
Source Point Press, yeah. So Source Point Press recently came under new management. Dirk Manning, longtime indie creator, sort of was revitalizing the company, and we're in the first wave of releases coming out. Frankenstein the Unconquered, which I alluded to earlier, very like Conan the Barbarian with Halloween monsters, you know, sweeping action horror epic kind of vibes. It's something we've been working on for a while. It was our third ever project that we did on Kickstarter. And we've been making issues, you know, for the past couple of years. Recently came out with the first volume, and I'm getting a direct market release for it in February. It'll be in stores. So if you're hearing this, you want to pick it up, go to your local comic shop and tell them to order it for you. So they can pick it up in Lunar or Prana.
Okay,
There's
so
another one
is moving from Kickstarter indie comics into the actual bookstores.
Absolutely.
That's and I know a few comic book creators or indie comic book creators that have mastered that pipeline of Kickstarter all the way to in the bookstores. Yeah. And so it's always fun to kind of meet the guys that's been down the final part of it and be like, hey, taking my hats off to you guys. I look forward to being on the opposite side of the stage when you guys when we start doing that.
For sure. It's
always fun. Looking back, actually, before we go that, what's next for Smut? Any plans for volume 2 or a spin-off story?
We have talked a little bit about potentially doing either a volume 2 or maybe some kind of anthology series or something to follow up on the characters. Ultimately, I went into it wanting it to be very, you know, mini series, one and done, which of course bit me in the ass because it's really popular now.
You go bigger. That's the thing.
Yeah, you can always go big. No, it's something where for sure, you know, we aren't uninterested in revisiting, but again, we're working on something else right now, and we might come back to it later. Is kind of our vibe.
So this is a random question I should have asked. So what's your production cycle like? Are you dropping like a book every quarter, or is like every, are you between every different? What's your pacing like when you comes to your stories? Because you
Well,
have books.
when it comes to writing books, I generally write, one like mini series to graphic novel, like one story,
Mhm.
uh, 2 to 3 times a year. I'll make that happen, and then fill in some one shots and some short comics and things intermittently. As far as production goes, as far as like what you're seeing, what people can go to Kickstarter and see, I try to have one up every more or less every month for about 8 to 10 months out of the year. That may sometimes that slows down, sometimes that speeds up, just based on how people are doing. If people don't have a lot of money, I don't want to squeeze a lot of money out of them. But next year we have planned for starting in February and going until October or November. One project every month. So
I don't. This wasn't supposed to be a part of this section. It just randomly came to my head, and now I feel like I need to act. So
sure,
every month you're running a Kickstarter,
just about,
a
yeah.
project, and then how long between you fund the project till it gets sent out to them? What's normally that like process for you guys?
I generally try and make it a reasonably fast turnaround. Sometimes things happen that just slow things down. There's not really a lot we can do about it. I think in our ideal sense, which Smut has been, the production line has been really, really good for us,
Mhm.
is like we get funded, we spend about a month to 2 months drawing it and getting it ready and lettering it. Then it generally takes about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4, if the printer is really like busy, to get things printed. And then generally the week that it comes in is the week that it gets sent out. So
Okay.
it's I would say ideally it's a 3 to 4 month turnaround.
Okay.
Sometimes things come up. We had a project launch in March of this year that was supposed to be out in July, or yeah, like June or July, and things happened in the artist's life. Production slowed down, and long story short,
We got
we're getting those comics like printed into the house probably sometime next week, and then sending them out right away. But
and I
like
get and I get that, and
yeah,
it's kind of like the reason why I ask is because it's like there's two sides to this conversation. There's the actual doing the comic, and then actually funding the comic. Sorry, funding the comic, and then actually delivering the comic. And what you were able to share with the group is that you can have your next project being worked on getting funded while you're currently working on another project, and it's
yes,
okay to have stuff like that. Because I would usually suffer, and I'll be honest with myself, I usually suffer with basically saying I want to be closer to done before I do that than
sure.
actually stuff. And
No,
if
and that's reasonable. And what I want to emphasize this,
Mhm.
I don't do that. I don't work on a number, like I don't start funding a number 2 if I'm still working on number 1.
Okay,
I'm going to make sure that it's either out or very, very close to being out before I start saying, hey guys, let's
Mhm.
look at this is the launch date for number 2. Has happened before where I think Frankenstein number 5 launched as 3 and 4 were going out simultaneously.
Mhm.
But it's something we try to avoid. And 2, the reason I'm comfortable doing that is because a lot of times not the same audience, like we talked about earlier. The people who want my urban fantasy are not the same as the people who want my horror. But even when it is like I've built up a lot of trust with people. I've delivered on every single project I've ever
Exactly.
done. So they know that they can expect it from me. They know that they're going to get a book at the end of the day. So having built that trust, I'm able to work on several projects simultaneously and still ask people, hey, pledge to this project. while they're waiting on the previous one. But I wouldn't recommend that to start out. That's something you need to build up over time.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is the capacity of your team. And if you know your team can consistently deliver from start to finish the book that you're working on within a 3 month timeline. And the reason I brought it up, because I have never, one of my other guests, they talk about having I think it was every month schedule like that too. And they want to have their person that they work with be done like 70% done before they even put it on the platform.
Sure.
And that to me was like, you're the second person that had a similar schedule, so I want to get a similar work process as well.
Yeah, well, and right now we're working on the basis of like we've got some sample pages made, but we're not going to be able to make it until the book is or until the project is funded. And I would love to eventually switch over to, hey, we're just going to make the book, and we know that it's going to be funded and funded well enough that we can we can get started
a little bit faster, and that's faster.
And we want to move toward that project, but I also want to be completely honest with people. Like if I'm wrong once, then and take that hit, then like, well, that was a great run, but so I'm trying to get to a point where we're doing well enough that something can slip, something can mess up, and we're still fine. We can still move forward. We can still make comics ahead of it.
And I love that, because what that kind of lets us know is that there's different gaps that we're trying to fill as we get to the door. But if you're running a business as a comic book artist, the business side of it basically saying it's a hobby unless you're making money. It's a business when you're making money. It's a hobby. Hobby costs you money. A business makes you money. Okay.
Well, I don't think that's true. Businesses are unprofitable sometimes for years and before they ever actually start to turn a profit. And so it's less about.
No, we're talking about pre-revenue companies.
I don't know the difference, but
no, the reason why I bring that up, right? Because it's like let's think of Facebook as pre-revenue.
Pre-revenue. Okay, so well, I think that's just true of all or most companies, is that you need to take out a loan. You need to, if I'm running a brick and mortar store, I've got to buy a franchise. I've got to take out a loan. I've got to pay rent, and generally speaking, that incurs a lot of debt up front that gets paid off over time.
Yeah, exactly.
Before anything that you like make actually goes into like profit. And that's true of making comics as well, even if it's out of your basement, and more so in some ways. But I would say the difference, like, is this a business or is this a hobby? Well, what do you want out of it? It's my career. I want it to be my job. So I treat it like a business.
And I would say that's and the value of what I would like to end with that conversation is that I want everyone to see it as a business, not as a hobby. And once you understand your goal is to make money with it, once you get the book in its form, then you'd be like, all right, Lo, can I find the audience for that? And that's the takeaway there. All right, so looking back at your journey, what is your biggest creative risk you've taken that's paid off thus far?
My biggest creative risk that I've taken that paid off. I mean, I have two answers, and it's like, one is doing like Kickstarter in the first place. That was not a guarantee. That I did not, it did not need to manifest this way. And it was a huge risk. It would have cost us a bunch of money if we had failed. And it did cost us a bunch of money even when we succeeded, but it would have cost us a lot more. And then my second one is doing Smut, doing a Not Safe for Work book. That was creatively a risk because it was something I hadn't approached before. And it was also a kind of a business risk in that, like, we were approaching, this very loaded genre that didn't have to pan out for us, but wound up being the reason that I'm still able to do this. So, I would say one of those is.
And the question before we even got on the screen, I told you about, so I hope you're ready for it.
Oh, fingers crossed.
What advice would you give to indie writers who wants to make comics that stand out and connect emotionally with readers?
Oh, that's such a big question. So my kind of my half serious answer is don't. If you can do anything else, you should do that, because this is hard, thankless work that you won't see any money for a while, if ever. But if you have to, if you absolutely have to, and you're not going to take my advice, I would say the most important thing is to speak. There's somebody to, if you want to connect with people, if you want to like bring something that's really like charged, then you need to work from a place of like personal truth, I guess. It doesn't need to be like your story, but it needs to be something very true that you've experienced and felt and can articulate extremely well. That like the pain or joy or combination thereof, and can pour that into a character and just like torture your audience with it. Because if you try and make something cool with no basis in anything that you know or care about, then there's always something cooler out there. You're not like we're competing against manga, guys. We're not going to win that department. So just like be sincere, be as sincere and vulnerable as possible, and don't be afraid to.
It's funny. No, I was gonna say you're right, especially when it comes to Korean manga right now, because it's just organized. That's the only thing. It's just better organized.
I mean, really, like we're individual creators going up against a massive. Well, I mean, on the American side, two massive companies that couldn't care less about like the comic book genre, like the comic books as a medium. They're trying to sell characters to movie studios.
True.
On our side, so we have no favors going in for that. And on the other side, the alternative side, the stuff that is selling in comic or in both comic shops and in like bookstores, you have manga, you have manhwa, you have stuff that is like that is considered in the places that they're from like culturally important and are given a lot of resources and are given a lot of attention. So like on both sides, you're an underdog. You have to remember that.
Yeah, and it's funny because literally, when I talk to like certain people that blow up on like webtoons, for example, a lot of the reason why they blow up is, even if they're American artists, is because they were on a Korean site.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the other thing is like, okay, well, you might think that this is really cool, but is that really cool to people who actually read comics? Which is just a different demographic than you probably think it is.
And I think what hopefully sooner rather than later we get to be a part of the generation that actually fix that pipeline.
I hope so. Genuinely, I hope so.
I genuinely want to be a part of it. And I would say part of My Comic AI is a part of being a part of that solution. Well, where can everyone find you?
I am most active on Blue Sky. It's just my name minus the last three letters, Wells Thomp. But if you want to find me, my website is also just my name, wellsthompson.com. And that will take you to whatever campaign I'm doing most actively, and as well as a shop where you can pick up my older books, digital and physical. You can sometimes you can find me at a convention. I try to post about it when I'm going, but during the actual con season, which we are blessedly out of, I can finally take a rest. I go all over the Midwest, and I try to go to a couple big shows outside of that a year. I was at Baltimore this year. I was at Emerald City. I was at Heroes. And finally, of course, Kickstarter. You can always you can always keep an eye out for me there. I usually have something running during the year. About to take 2 months off after this one is finished. We're getting started strong in February. Also do have a newsletter up on Substack called Comics, Cats, and Cocktails. If you want a really direct pipeline to what I'm doing, that's the absolute best place to go. But if you just want me on social media, yeah, it's probably Blue Sky, maybe Instagram sometimes.
All right, guys. All that information of where you can find him, especially his website and his Substack, is in the description below. Please check him out when you have the opportunity. Now, Wells, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been awesome hearing about Smut Volume 1 coming to life and how you crave outer space that both bold and deeply human. Sorry. For everyone watching, you can support Smut Volume 1 on Kickstarter. Read more about Wells' work at wellsthomas.com and sign up for his newsletter for updates on future projects. I am Sean Fuller, creator of Apollo's Run, host of Behind the Comics, and brought to you by mycomic.ai, helping creators grow, analyze, and monetize their work. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, keep creating and supporting indie comics. Thank you.